Vice Mayor, if you'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then I can read the notice, or whichever way you want.
The chair needs a sufficient second, and that was near simultaneous.
How about Councilor O'Doherty? This is kind of a project near and dear to her heart, so that's fine.
I think that's appropriate, Vice Mayor. Thank you so much, Councilor O'Doherty, for the second. I think we have Assistant City Manager Feeser here to talk to us about this.
Correct. Honorable Mayor, City Councils, thanks for holding this special meeting tonight to allow us a chance to apply for this grant. What we're trying to do is get a resolution approved to apply for a 50-50 grant to support a solar array at Laramie Fire Station number 3. A little bit different than with the Rec Center and the Ice and Event Center is this solar array also includes the installation of potentially Laramie's first public universal charging station that's not Tesla based. We worked with Creative Energies, who we worked with the last time, to look at the project and to do some pre-design, which is submitted for you. This system, if it's approved and we receive the grant, would provide about 24% of the fire department's energy consumption, and then would also provide us the ability to encourage some electric vehicle charging in West Laramie related to the fire station in this system. With that being said, it's a 50-50 match. We currently don't have any funds budgeted on the project for this. We're estimating roughly $40,000 in grant and $40,000 in city funds to match this project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Question or the Assistant City Manager? Questions? Let's go to Councilmember Schuster and then to Harrington. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the charging stations, will there be a credit card thing that they would then pay a fee to charge their cars? I'm just curious about that.
Correct. Honorable Mayor, to you, to Councilor Schuster. The system that I'm planning, that I'm hoping to propose that we use, will take a credit card. It basically works through a smartphone and an app, and people are charged what the rate that you decide to charge them based on this. I believe that in my mind, we would try to do something variable. So when we're generating the energy through solar, we potentially have a little bit of a decreased rate. And then when the sun's down and we're based on AC power, that the rate's a little bit higher. But that's yet to be determined in working with the company that would provide the electric vehicle charging station.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Manager, do you happen to know how long it takes to charge a car with an electric vehicle charging station?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Harrington, I've actually been doing a lot of research this week on electric vehicle charging. The level 2 charger will require potentially up to 2 hours of charging to get it charged at. Right now, there's 3 types of chargers on the system. There's a level 3 charger, which is basically your at-home overnight charger, a level 2 charger, which is about 2 hours charging, and then DC fast chargers, which unfortunately require 3-phase, which we don't have in this area right now. And so this is the highest power electric vehicle charging that we can put in this area. I do have plans that we're working on in response to electric vehicle charging and the Wyoming Department of Transportation's recent EV charging study, where we're looking to potentially install, if we can get it worked out, a fast charging station, potentially at Boswell and 3rd Street, and then maybe another level 2 charger closer to the downtown in conjunction with Visit Laramie. This is a project on my to-do list that I'm slowly working through.
That's great, Todd. And I had really no idea. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can just ask a follow-up. Sorry,
Yep.
got a little ahead of myself there. So I was wondering, I guess, given that it'll take 2 hours, if we can include some variety of wayfinding that would point folks towards, potentially like the really wonderful city park out there that's just a few blocks away. Maybe some other opportunities for things that could happen while their car charges.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Harrington, we can absolutely do some of that. Municipal signs are exempt through code, but we can do something nice. I'm also trying to figure out how to mark the space for EV charging so that we're consistent throughout the city as we move the program and grow the program. But we can direct them to retail on Snowy Range Road too, because it's not too far away. And yeah, we will do the best we can with that.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. Todd, I was just curious. I'm not familiar with how the Teslas work. You mentioned non-Tesla charging stations. Does that mean a Tesla would not be able to use this system?
No. Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Gabriel. Currently in Laramie, the only charging station I'm aware of is at I believe it's the Fairfield Inn, and it's all Tesla specific charging. There's a certain term that these ones will charge virtually every car on the market. The system we're looking at, plus Tesla usually has a converter that they can convert and charge their Teslas off that. So this one's just not a proprietary charger for mostly Tesla vehicles only.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Schuster.
Just to help with that answer, everybody runs their own plug-in. Nobody's universal. So what fits one brand won't fit another brand. So a lot of times they could buy an adapter and then yes, the Tesla could be charged there. So it's one of these things that would be really nice, just like, I hate to say, a gasoline port that everybody's fuel nozzle fits that vehicle. Tesla decided that they wanted to be independent. So they're very, very proprietary about what can charge their vehicle. The other little known factor, the slower you recharge a battery, the longer it will last. So when you try to do one of these quick chargers, I'm going to say that the battery has 100,000 lives. When you do a quick charge to a battery, you take one of the lives away. It charges quicker, but it doesn't make it last as long. So the overnight charging station is always the best to use because it pushes it in gradually instead of trying to shove it in really quick.
All right. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schuster.
Just to help with that answer, everybody runs their own plug-in. Nobody's universal. So a lot of times they could buy an adapter and then yes, the Tesla could be charged there. So it's one of these things that would be really nice, just like, I hate to say, a gasoline port that everybody's fuel nozzle fits that vehicle. Tesla decided that they wanted to be independent. So they're very, very proprietary about what can charge their vehicle. The other little known factor, the slower you recharge a battery, the longer it will last. So when you try to do one of these quick chargers, I'm going to say that the battery has 100,000 lives. When you do a quick charge to a battery, you take one of the lives away. So I just thought I'd say that.
All right, thanks a lot. Other questions, discussion about this project? I'm going to go to the Vice Mayor, and then I'll go back to Councilmember Harrington.
Yeah, I think this is a great, and I appreciate all your efforts on this. I'm looking at the diagram on our attachment on page 4, and I'd just like to confirm, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm reading it right, that the charging point will be really close to the road there where that red star is. Is that correct?
Honorable Mayor, through you, that is correct. I had vacillated back and forth between using the parking lot or the street side. I was afraid that if we used the parking lot, it wouldn't feel like a public charging station, and so I opted to plan to have it land as, it'll probably actually land in the, we're still debating how it will site plan in, but it'll be close to the roadway, yes.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I was curious as to where the panels are going to be located, and obviously they're going to be on the roof, so that's cool. And yeah, it looks good so far. However it works out, I think it's great. Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington, and I'll go to Councilmember Schmeckel. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Manager, I was curious just in looking at the, I think it was the detailed proposal that's on in the packet. Under their Who We Are section, it mentions Amicus Solar Cooperative. And I'm curious, is that something that is available to members of the public, this sort of like bulk buying opportunity, or is it something that's sort of available through for us because we have used Creative Energies for this grant?
Honorable Mayor, through you, I don't have an answer to that.
Okay, thanks.
I can try to find one though.
All right, Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Manager, looking at your diagram here, is this going to be blocking any access to the sidewalks, or are we going to have to route around it, especially when it's engaged to a vehicle?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Schmeckel, that's my intent is to do good site planning. We may have to pull a piece of sidewalk and make it loop around it so that it leaves the proper passing. So we've still got some work to do. This is all strictly pretty preliminary. The way it works is if we're awarded the grant, then we'll apply for, or we'll put out an RFQ that will include a final design for how that layout lands.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the Assistant City Manager? Everybody's interested in these solar projects, which is good, We've made some pretty large policy commitments to this over the last couple of years. Council, let's see if there's any public comment on this. Councilmember Cumbie, I'm sorry, were you raising a hand? Okay. Why don't we see if there's any public comment on this? It doesn't seem like it, and the city clerk doesn't see any either. One last chance for any discussion. I'll add an anecdote. I was talking to Commissioner Gosar recently, and he had raised the topic of working locally through the different local government branches to increase the availability of charging stations for electric vehicles. I've forwarded him this information, and I hope that we have some more opportunities and more areas where we can do this in the future. And I know the Assistant City Manager has taken this policy goal pretty seriously and made a lot of moves on behalf of implementing those policy goals. And the council and the people we represent appreciate it very, very much. So we look forward to more of it. I think that's all I'd say by way of comment. I don't see any other hands coming up, so I think I'll go to the city clerk for a roll call vote on the item.
Cumbie,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
That's 9 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
That motion carries and that item's been approved. Thank you, Assistant City Manager. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Members of the council, we need to adjourn this special meeting so that we can get into the work session. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Schuster for the motion.
Thank you. I move we adjourn and go into our regular Tuesday night work session.
Second.
Councilmember Schmeckel with the second, I think. And please indicate your vote on the motion by raising your hand or saying aye or both. Aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. The special meeting is adjourned. And we're now into the work session. On the work session this evening, the first item we have is public comment on non-agenda items with a 30-minute time limit. We'll check and see if there's comment from the public on non-agenda items. I don't see anyone raising a hand. The city clerk is not indicating to me otherwise. So we will close the public comment period and move into the work session item, beekeeping regulations. Beekeeping regulations. And we have Chief Stalder. Welcome, Chief. And the city manager both for background. I do not know who is first up, so I'm just going to go in order on the agenda and recognize the city manager. And also we have some other guests, Officer Solers from Animal Control, which is that's an extremely rare treat at the city council meeting. Welcome, City Manager Jordan. Over to you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not on video tonight, but I think this will be a fairly short from my conversations with Chief Stalder. I don't have much to add except to pass it to Chief Stalder, and you've noted we do have staff here as well from Animal Control who will be assisting us. Welcome, Renee.
Yep, we love it. All right, Chief, over to you.
Mayor and Council, I asked Renee Solers to be here tonight to address this item. She's very well versed in beekeeping. This item was discussed back in 2010 when we revised Title VI of Municipal Code. The only thing I'd like to mention is that while Renee is our resident expert on beekeeping and a lot of other matters that I would like to congratulate her on her years of service, she's going to be retiring and resigning this week. So this act from Renee is really very much appreciated, and her service to the Laramie Police Department and the city has been valuable. So with that, I'll turn it over to Renee. And I learned from Renee this afternoon that over the course of the last year and a half, she's one of the fortunate ones. She has never Zoomed before. So if there's issues, I applaud her for that.
Thank you, Chief Stalder. Renee, the chief is a big fan of Zoom, and so he's very familiar with it. But and I'm sorry for the double thumbs down. Of course, I'm happy to hear about your next steps. But you're a familiar face there at the animal shelter, and I remember hanging out and adopting my first dog ever from there and talking to you, and how when I'd go back there, the dog seemed to remember you, which I imagine is probably not a unique experience. But anyway, we're glad for you, and we're excited to hear what you're going to tell us about beekeeping. So over to you.
Well, certainly, I guess we were just tasked with drafting some basic verbiage to maybe put some restrictions or limitations on beekeeping as a hobby in the community. My understanding was there had been some level of concern voiced to maybe different council people. And so we came up with some basic provisions that would at least moderately limit beekeeping activities to some certain spaces, and then also to some certain, I guess, volume or size of an operation within a single property. So I think you've all gotten copy on the proposed verbiage at this point, or not?
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. We always, wanted to address the fact that most of this is already regulated at the state level. So we added some basic provisions that would require people being hobby beekeepers in the community to be compliant with those state statutes, and then also to keep their colonies on their own private property, or at least on private property. And then also to keep a bit of a setback so that they had to keep any colonies of honeybees 20 feet from another residence unless they had a signed waiver from the owner of that residence.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I apologize for my interruption. I have yet to see the proposed regulation. Maybe I've missed it in my email. I don't see it attached to any of the information tonight, and I guess I'm just needing a little guidance here.
No, Vice Mayor, that's perfectly appropriate. I saw that we had a link through the agenda, but it's only to the cover sheet. The regulations or the proposed language isn't attached to it, but I think that Renee was kind of walking us through some of the major points there, and so I'd like to allow her to continue to do that, and maybe we can see if we can get the supplementary information forwarded on through an email, if that works.
Mayor, I'm working on that right now. Actually, yeah. I apologize for the oversight.
No, I don't think it's a big issue. We'll just have it here in a few minutes, and we'll go back and reference it for questions or further discussion. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Not an interruption at all. Renee, go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
No interruption, and what we drafted was very basic. So it's so short that I can read it to you if you like. We just added a provision, currently just numbered it as 6.06.090 and addressed honeybees. We indicated hobby honeybees are allowed within the city, providing they meet the following requirements. And then we had an A, B, and C provision. The A provision was that the hobbyist beekeeper must be compliant with Wyoming state statutes, Title 11, Chapter 7, Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is also known as the Wyoming Apiculture Act. And that really does a lot in terms of defining beekeeper, defining honey beekeeper, hobby beekeeper, and then also providing some provisions where they have to register their hives with the state, which would provide them, at least the state, with some good enforcement practices or alternatives if there were issues. Provision B, we indicated that the honeybee colonies must be kept on private property, so they wouldn't be in a parkway or a street edge. And then provision C, we indicated that the honeybee colonies must be kept 20 feet from a neighboring residence or a public right-of-way unless the owner of said residence waived that requirement in writing. And that was really the end of what we drafted.
Pretty succinct, and appreciate that summary. So given that you have the general substance here, council members, if you'd like to go into our discussion and questions about it, let's do that now. Councilmember Harrington, and then I'll go to you, Councilmember Somerville. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had requested this work session just for context for the council, following a question from a constituent in Ward 1 regarding what sounded like maybe some borderline commercial beekeeping activity on their neighbor's property that was adversely affecting he and his family. Is commercial beekeeping allowed within the city limits?
Currently, any beekeeping is allowed within the city limits because it's not addressed at all. Okay. So what we tried to do in terms of what we proposed just as staff was to limit that to hobby beekeepers, which is 5 hives or fewer as defined by the state.
Okay, cool. So is it really, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
of course,
is it less about like what you do with the honey as the end product and more about the number of hives that would dictate that sort of like threshold of commercial or hobby? Maybe commercial is the wrong term to use as the next step beyond hobby.
Certainly, I believe if I dive through it again, which I have not done later this afternoon, I think they go from hobby to general beekeepers, and that would allow more than 5. And then I'd have to look and see. I have to admit, I read it primarily from the hobby keeper perspective, so I'd have to look and see how they define like a commercial operation. But certainly, they're very clear that the hobby beekeeper is limited to 5 hives in one location. and they have to register those hives. There are no fees to register those hives, but they have to be registered with the state.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Councilmember Harrington. Let's go to Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilor Harrington, I appreciate the context because that was going to be one of my questions, is what issue had been brought to the attention of the council. The second question I have for you, Renee, is if they have to acquire the adjoining property owner's permission, when we're dealing with rentals, are they obtaining permission from the renters or from the property owners? And I'm thinking of in the tree area where I know we have some hobby beekeepers already, and how that might work logistically.
Good point. We could certainly add any kind of verbiage that would make council feel comfortable. We did not necessarily consider that. I think as we treat this, it's something that we pulled pretty directly from our fowl and poultry ordinance, which allows people to have a waiver, and also from some of our livestock ordinances, which allows people to have a waiver from a neighbor. And I think that I'll say I pulled the verbiage pretty directly, and it says owner, so we might want to address that.
I appreciate that, and just for the discussion piece on that, so I am myself allergic to bees, as is my daughter, but we own our home. If you had renters move into a home that had the same considerations, while we appreciate what they do, we don't necessarily want them around us. Otherwise, we have to buy more stock at EpiPen. So I think that would be a good point of discussion, maybe to think about adding.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. EpiPens are not cheap. I'm not sure, but I think something like beekeeping, something like that would probably have to be expressly permitted in a lease, but I don't know if anybody's ever thought about it. It's a good question. I saw that Councilmember Gabriel had raised his hand. Go ahead, Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. Renee, first off, thank you for your service. Appreciate all of the good work that you've done. And I remember a couple of years ago, I don't remember exactly, but there were some beekeepers concerned about mosquito control that the city was using. And since we've changed over the years, have you heard any kind of feedback on the difference in chemicals that the city was using to the present time when it refers to beekeeping?
I haven't, and I must say that I'm not terribly abreast of that. I don't take any extraordinary precautions with my hives when they inform me that they're going to spray. Mosquito control does do a call based on the keeper registry here in the state. So I pretty routinely get called anytime they're going to do any aerial spraying, but they're pretty careful about doing that after hours. So my bees should hopefully all be home. So that's not something I personally keep abreast of.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Gabriel, I know that Mr. Feeser's still on the call, and he might be able to touch on that just a little bit. Assistant City Manager, since you're here, would you add anything to that with regard to any insight or input? And then I'll go to you, Councilmember Cumby. I saw your hand. If you have anything to add, Assistant City Manager, you're certainly welcome to.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Ms. Solers actually explained it perfectly. We do have a notification list that we do follow. We do our fogging after dark when the bees should be homed, and then we notify when we have aerial applications going on. But our chemicals, keep in mind, are really specifically designed to target mostly mosquitoes and should have very little effect on the local bee population. So
I appreciate that, and that was a good question, Councilmember Gabriel, so I wanted to get some more information about it if there was any. Councilmember Cumby, thank you for waiting for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted a little clarification on terminology. When you say within 20 feet from a residence, does that mean the actual home or structure, or does that mean the property line?
Councilman, as we currently enforce it, we do measure from the home. Again, enforcing it for livestock rather than honeybees at the moment.
So it would be from the location of the hive to the nearest portion of the home.
Correct.
residents. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Cumby. You guys are really coming up with some toughies on this topic. Other questions for? All right, I'm going to go to Councilmember Schuster and then to the Vice Mayor in order with hands. Go ahead, Councilmember Schuster.
Mine was a comment. I just didn't know how late you wanted to wait us on a comment. So go ahead and go to the Vice Mayor because I don't have a question.
Question, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a question either. I'm just wondering if, I mean, the 20 feet from the home structure seems a little more reasonable than 20 feet from the property line, but I'm wondering if we could somehow, meet in the middle and maybe, 10 feet or something. It just seems to be a pretty big distance from especially in some of our neighborhoods that are pretty, pretty close. Homes are pretty close to each other. The other thing, and this gets more in the comment line and maybe not having anything to do with regulation, but I love the fact that we've got some beekeepers in Laramie, and we've got bees at some of our parks, and I don't know if we've ever thought about. We've got the city, assistant city manager on the call too. I wondered if we, have thought about a bit more of an extensive program to encourage and educate folks in this arena. And this is a little off regulation topic, but I certainly think the more people know about bees, the better off we're all going to be. So I don't know if we've given that any thought.
Vice Mayor, go ahead, Renee.
To get into a little bit of the ecology of it, and I'm certainly not a professional ecologist. A lot of people have really taken on to the notion of saving the bees, and it's certainly a wonderful thing to be aware of the various pollinators that are out there, but honeybees by no means need our help. They are a livestock animal, to be clear. They are not in a situation where we're going to see the extinction of honeybees and where they are critical pollinators for our crops here in the state, especially. If we are looking at it from an ecology and education standpoint and encouraging people to be bee friendly, it would be more valuable to encourage people to be friendly to native bees that pollinate our local crops and to bees that are not harbored as livestock.
I can hear my friend Christy Bell. UW entomology. Just clapping screaming as loud as possible and screaming in support of that. The Vice Mayor should. Vice Mayor, I'll give you her email. You can talk to her about some of those topics. I appreciate that, though. Councilmember Schuster, you had a question or a comment you wanted to make, and then I'll go back to you, Councilmember Harrington. That's the hands that I have in order. If everybody's okay on that. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. As a person that used to have a retail grocery store here in town, we bought local honey. And a lot of people do not realize that if you have local allergies, that honey actually helps you with those allergies. I know a lot of people see a bee and go running and screaming, but a honeybee is non-aggressive. Unless you pick a fight with him, he is not going to pick a fight with you. So just in support of this, thank you for the local growers. Your honey helps out a lot of people. So that's my comment. Thank you.
You bet, Councilmember Schuster. I think I've heard that before as well, honey being beneficial for people that have local pollen allergies. I sure don't know anything about it, but I have heard that. I hope that's a thing. Councilmember Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A thought on some of the questions earlier regarding the sort of like the setback of the hive from neighbors' property. And I've been frantically racking my brain, so I promise to do more research on this before it comes up for any sort of vote with the council. But I recall reading something about location of hives in sort of relationship to something like a fence. And and the importance of that structure in forcing the bees up rather than like cruising straight out where they would run into people, of course. So I'm wondering about consideration in this ordinance for that distance. I think it would be better for us to use the sort of like best practices for sending bees up rather than just sort of like a distance from another structure. So I promised to bring something more concrete, but I did just want to share that with the council.
Thanks, Councilmember Harrington. Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Renee, when you were working on this topic for us and putting this together, did you look at some other regulations that neighboring communities or cities that might be comparable to Laramie and how they've addressed this issue? Or
I will say we did not, Honorable Mayor. We looked at thinking that the largest provision or the largest measure of regulations that would be reasonable and possibly in need were probably already contained in the state statute. We did not look at other communities to see whether they allowed it. I think anecdotally, it seems to me that Laramie is maybe a little bit on the forefront here in the state. At least I'd have to do some further investigation into that and see what other communities allow beekeeping inside city limits.
Well, I could certainly appreciate that, and that seems like a reasonable approach for y'all to have taken. I think the reason I asked that question is I'm thinking about these comments and questions we've heard about. Is it from the house? Is it from the property line? Is it from the fencing? Maybe there's some guidance there and some other regulations that are out there, but maybe there isn't. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind another question. Have we had complaints? I mean, short of, are we doing something and we really don't need to? Short of a couple issues related to, the thought that maybe our, pesticides are causing some issues. Have we had folks complain and say, hey, my neighbor has bees and, what can I do? I don't know.
Is that question for
anybody who might know?
Anybody that wants to take it? Maybe there isn't an answer, and I see more hands, but I want to follow this thread with the Vice Mayor just for a moment. Nobody seems to be giving you a yes that there's been a flood of complaints. We heard Councilmember Harrington mention that he brought forth the work session based on some conversations. Councilmember Harrington, Chief Stalder's raised, so I'm going to go to the Chief real quick.
Well, Mayor and Council, I'll let Renee answer that question further, but to my knowledge, over the past 10 or 11 years, we've had no complaints come into the police department about beekeeping. And Renee, if you know differently, something came directly into animal control, please provide that. But we've not had complaints.
Yeah, go for it, Renee. Thanks.
So what I can say for at least the contacts that I've had, and certainly we take lots of calls, I shouldn't say lots, we take some calls each year, usually in the fall, that pertain to bees, and those usually get fielded to me, just because I'm the beekeeper in the staff. And so what I find when I respond to those calls on a private after hours basis is that they're usually bees that are not honeybees. I've had the majority of those calls have been either a local honey or a local bumblebee that we have that populations grow in the fall, and then people become aware that he's set up house under the hot tub or, under the deck, under a trash can, something like that. When they see that fall activity happen because the population is higher, then they'll notice those bees and typically think that they're honeybees. But when I respond to investigate further and try to help them out, I almost always find that they're Bombus huntii, which is a local bumblebee. Occasionally, I'll find that they might be paper wasps or yellow jackets. In all of the calls that I have taken, the only time I've had a call that actually turned out to be honeybees was where a feral colony of honeybees had set up in the soffit of a local hotel. And so they were looking for actual removal services for that honeybee colony. Otherwise, I personally haven't taken any calls that pertain to honeybees at the animal shelter. I believe Officer Lang said he had fielded some questions, whether they've been formal calls into the shelter or questions because, you know, a friend or neighbor or a citizen knows that he's an animal control officer. That I can't speak to, I don't know. But by and large, not a profound number of calls that pertain to honeybees at all.
Great, thank you. So maybe we're just acting and there's really no need to act with anything. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing. But unless other council members have a particular desire, I'm not really the least bit interested in adding any more ordinances other than to follow state statute, right? Which we know we have to do, so.
Okay, opinion from the Vice Mayor about the need for the ordinance. I see the city managers raise their hand.
Mayor, I just wanted to kind of echo what Renee said and what Councilor Harrington said as well. We did have a spate of concerns come through the city manager's office. I think that was last fall. I do not know if they were the bee, what type of bee it turned out to be when animal control looked at it. I do believe it was one of the Ward 1 constituents, probably the same thing Councilor Harrington is remembering. And it was that series of emails, probably 2 or 3 of them, that I think prompted the request for this work session. And it was quickly thereafter when we realized that the city had repealed the beekeeping regulations in 2011, and that we really just had state statute to rely on. So whether or not it's appropriate to add back some language with respect to beekeeping, I'll leave that to you all. Other than to say the city did have a history of having some language in Title VI that pertained to this activity.
Thank you, City Manager. Other questions or comments following this thread? Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier, I had my hand up just to indicate that I had, in fact, spoken, but it was more or less to repeat what I had said before, that I had spoken with a constituent about an issue. I haven't been out there. To be honest with you, would have a very hard time telling you much about the species of bee. I could basically tell you it's a bee or a wasp, and it stops there. And maybe that's not accurate even. But so, you know, I think there is a risk of that, but I would just add that I think maybe just a small bit of context that the constituent I spoke with, their concern was not necessarily, sorry, just a baby thing, but the concern wasn't so much about honey, like necessarily that their neighbors had honeybees. It was that some hives had moved in. Like, I think somebody that had bees in the country brought them in and were sort of like housing them at their neighbor's property temporarily. And that was really what was causing the issue. I'm not sure that there's if it's one issue since 2011, that doesn't feel like it rises to the level of needing more ordinance to me. So I would share that opinion with the Vice Mayor. But I think it's something we should keep an eye on. And I would be interested to know, presumably the issue is occurring again if it's a fall situation for the folks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Comments and questions on this thread. Hey, Councilmember O'Doherty, go for it.
I'm so thrilled that we have that kind of expertise that can tell the bees apart. So thank you, Renee.
And for another week.
Yeah, I know. So then what do we do? Have to ask entomologists, I guess. And I agree. I think that the honeybees or the beekeepers get a bad rap when wild bees are doing things, and sometimes they do things that look scary to the public, like when they're all gathering up in a tree somewhere. And it sounds like the former complaints were not honeybees, so I also don't think we need to pursue this, but we can keep our eyes and ears open. Thank you.
All right. Well, other comments or questions? I have one if nobody else is waiting. Anybody that hasn't had a turn yet that has a comment or a question? Oh, my question, I guess, Renee, is I think you're coming from a more knowledge base about this than probably anybody else. Do you recall any discussions around the council's action to repeal or cancel out the stuff back in 2011 around this, and what prompted that? Or
yeah, Honorable Mayor, my understanding, and it's from outside, because I don't recall, and maybe Chief Stalder has a better recollection than I do about whether animal control was involved. I only know about it from a citizen perspective. My understanding was that there was a graduate study program or an individual who was interested in having a community hive there in Labonte Park. And they did have to go through some number of steps to be able to get the authorizations and permissions to have that hive in Labonte Park. So there was for a period of time, a community top bar hive there in the children's garden at Labonte Park. I don't know and wasn't able to establish whether that hive is still there. The structure that supports it is still there, but I don't see an actual hive body, and I don't think that there's anybody currently, and that's, you know, speculative, it's observational. I wasn't able to confirm whether they're still dealing with those bees in that place or not. But they were interested in having that hive, so they went through the steps to get what was basically a blanket prohibition on honeybees removed from the city ordinance at that time.
All right, I appreciate that. Yeah, the citizen perspective is as good as any sometimes. Vice Mayor, I see the Chief's raised his hand, so I'm going to go to him and see if he's got something to add on this answer, and then I'll go back to you. Chief Stalder?
Sorry about that. Yeah, Mayor and Council, back in 2010 when we did the revisions to Title VI, we just made a decision that it was better to go with the existing state statute that covered, you know, basically not USDA, but, you know, Wyoming Department of Agriculture provisions and restrictions on beekeeping within the community, and that we really didn't need the redundancy. So what Renee indicated was correct, but it was council's belief, you know, 11 years ago that by removing it and putting it back into Wyoming state statute, as Renee had started her discussion out tonight, was the best way to handle, you know, hobbyist beekeeping within the community.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've got Chris Moody in the attendance room, you may have noticed, and he might be able to speak about what's going on at Labonte Park, and you may want to bring him in on some of this. I know it's kind of out of the ordinary, but he's a resident beekeeper, and
yeah, let's swear him in to give testimony on the bees. Mr. Moody, if you're welcome, and feel free to add anything here that you'd like to, if you'd like to.
Yes. Thank you. This is a great discussion. Hi, Renee. How you doing?
Hi, Chris.
I've been keeping the bees there at the community garden at Labonte for the last, since 2013 or so. So they're going great guns. Every year there's a hive in there, and I've in the 7 or 8 years that I've managed that hive, I've had no complaints or issues with the people in the community garden, and the council went to great lengths to position the hive as much away from the activities in the community garden there at Labonte, and to face it away from people. But there's a sign that instructs people on how to sort of approach the observational hive and so forth. And every year there's a beehive going, and they're going great guns. So I think it's been a really great educational opportunity for people at the community garden to see how the bees are doing.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And just go ahead. Go ahead. Just a comment about the pesticides. Labonte Park gets sprayed quite a bit, And I don't do the observational hive is very, very hands off, being a top bar hive. But in the years that I've managed that hive, I've not seen any direct or obvious issue with a die off of the hive or compromised health of the hive at that location, and those bees are being subjected to quite a bit of spraying in the park. Just an observation. You never know exactly what's going on and what's affecting them. Probably the biggest issue with that hive is that it's so small, but nonetheless, it's there, it's working, people enjoy it, and they seem to be thriving.
It's good information. Mr. Moody, stick around in case there's another question or something that comes up, if you would, please, if you don't mind and you have time. I don't know that we're going to go too much longer and later into the night on this, but you're here and you've got some good perspective on that. I have forgotten who had a hand up next, folks, for the questions and discussion. Vice Mayor, appreciate you bringing Mr. Moody in here for us. Any other discussion or on this topic? I think we're kind of circling around, well, do we even want to put in a set of guidelines? I don't think this is, personally, from my perspective, I don't think it's a real heavy-handed piece of ordinance, but there is always the point of if it's not necessary, do we really want it there? On the other hand, Vice Mayor, my question to you is the question. My hypothetical is always: do we want to wait until we're asked to do it? It's always the balance. Councilmember Somerville, you were talking about kids and allergies and things like that, which is on my mind as we talk about this. I don't know how parents with kids that might have bee allergies or people that might have bee sting allergies, what their perspective on this would be. I don't know that a city ordinance is going to protect you from a bee sting and any issues that you might have to deal with that, and if it's 20 feet away or not, if that really has an impact. But when you started talking about that, it made me start thinking. Council members, if you haven't talked about this, I'm asking you to now. What do you think here? The Vice Mayor raises a good question.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in.
Yeah,
and I would say, just if we were go down the path of regulation, I think some consideration on who you're getting permission from, just to make sure that whoever has bees in town is aware of their neighbors. I wish it was so simple as to protect your kid from a deadly bee sting by city ordinance, but it's not. I also think education is a really big component for hobby beekeepers to understand those risks, and those allergies are becoming more common as we go on and time goes on. So, however, I am not necessarily on the bandwagon of we need to do something about this at the moment. So I would leave it at that. If we do decide to do something, then I would maybe bring something along those lines up.
Yeah. I sort of like this idea of, instead of having a city ordinance that says you have to do this, that, and the other thing with your hobby bees, it's that you have to, go to hobby beekeeping class before you do it. But I don't think we can put that in the city code. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Schmeckel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to echo the Vice Mayor's comments and question whether or not we actually need to do this. I feel that even if there is a 20-foot setback, I don't think the bees are going to stay within that 20-foot setback, and we're not going to have any way to really control them either. So I'm highly curious as to how effective this might be. I think it's wonderful that we have people on here that can give us perspectives from both the parent side and the allergy side, as well as the hobbyist beekeeper side. I think the comment also earlier that if you harass the bees, they'll harass you back. If there's some merit in that when it comes to allergies and educating people about that.
I think thank you, Councilor Schmeckel. I'm just thinking back in my own experience. Certainly a lot of yellow jacket problems for me, but they're a different insect. All right, I'm kind of getting a consensus position here on this, and I think the staff is too. I'd say this though. I think we should have these draft regulations around, and we will. And we should keep them handy and probably get them reattached to this agenda for records. And if this topic needs to be revisited, then we'll have at least a jumping off point, and that research and that staff work won't have been for naught. We have something there to take a look at should it seem maybe more necessary to go down that road, but I'm not seeing anybody. Councilmember Cumby, are you raising a hand? I'd like to recognize you. Go ahead.
I'm just curious if in this previous complaint, was there any follow-up or investigation, and did state statutes cover whatever needed to be done in that situation?
That's for whoever wants to take a crack at it, I guess. Yeah, go ahead, Renee.
So speaking from the animal control perspective, we don't deal with bees or insects at all at this point in time. So there would have, as far as I know, I'm not sure what Councilman Harrington was able to determine, but we would not have had any opportunity or cause to do an investigation on our end, because our ordinance currently doesn't consider insects to be animals. It defines animals as vertebrate animals, so we don't have any authority over insects at this point in time. So from our end, no investigation.
For what it's worth, Council, I did not go out and inspect the hive, but like I meant, or the issue, but like I mentioned earlier, it would have been pointless. So if he calls back, I'm sure I'll speak with him soon. I'll see what I can do to see if the issue still persists and get a little more info all around. But
thank you. I'm for less regulation.
Well, I think, again, it's probably good for us to have had some staff work on this and look into it a little bit, so that if we revisit the topic, it's not starting from zero. I think everybody can appreciate if we don't think right now there's a need for this, then maybe we'd be better served by not putting anything into the code yet, or maybe we'll never have to. On the other hand, you never know, and if it starts to get more popular, Murphy's Law is that there'll be more issues that arise from it. I don't know we're going to see a big jump in beekeeping in town, but I don't know that we're not. So I think it's good to have at least a starting point here. Any other thoughts? Are we kind of circled around this general thought that at this time we don't necessarily believe we need an ordinance? Well, that's why we have work sessions, and so I don't remember when this one was called for. Seems like it was a while ago, because I don't remember talking about it until tonight. So, but we'll keep the proposed language should the need arise, and we'll go from there. Appreciate all the staff work and time on it, and time being here tonight to ask a bunch of questions, because that helps us out. And Mr. Moody, thanks for being around and talking to us about the park hive. Any other questions for staff before we let them go on this one tonight? Say some more embarrassing things about how, well, you might find them embarrassing, about how, Renee, we're really grateful you've been with the city for a long time, and you're a familiar and well-liked employee of the city, so we're sorry to hear you go, but we're also happy to see that you've got something else happening for your next phase of life. So good on you, and thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's the end of our work session on bees and beekeeping regulations. And I think we all ended up in the same place there. We didn't want to do anything preemptive, but what we're going to do is hope that we don't have to mess with that. But if we do, we've got something we can go back to as a starting place. We've got public comment next on non-agenda items, and I don't see. Oh, I'm going to go over to City Clerk.
Mayor, the public comment listed next is the one that council had requested in the revisions to the rules of procedure.
Oh, so that's the
topic. Yeah.
That's the agenda. I'm sorry, the topic specific public comment. Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you, City Clerk. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. This is the first meeting we've had that on the agenda.
All right. Yeah, that's a good point. Not that I wouldn't have made the mistake anyway, because I probably would have, and I probably will next time. But let's see if there's any comments on it. I don't know that our frequent guest is dying to talk to us about bees, but she sure can. And I don't see a hand up. City Clerk, did you have anybody letting you know one way or the other? Okay. Well, that's it for public comments on the work session topic. And then we've got city council updates. So I'll just go in order of hands up, or I'll just start picking my favorite people. First up, Councilmember Somerville, you're up. I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have one quick update for the council if you haven't gotten to your email yet. This afternoon, you received kind of a notice from Laramie Main Street. Their board has made the decision to move forward with the WYO Theater revamp project. It'll come in 4 stages, and so they are initiating the first stage 1 that is mainly to work on electrical and mechanical upgrades, fire suppression system, and things along those lines within the building. I believe at the pop-up art walk on the 10th, they'll also be doing a fundraiser to start trying to put together some dollars in addition with grants to get this program up and running. I'll just say on the other kind of side, the board has done a lot of work. They have got a very dedicated kind of advisory group of members that are not on the board that have been working on this. They've got a good vision for getting that studio space or the theater space back up and running in kind of a multifunctional discipline. So I just want to make sure everybody got that email and is aware of that campaign kicking off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Somerville. I did get that email. I wonder if, Councilmember, if you might answer, is there any thought towards that theater ever operating again as a standard movie theater?
Mr. Mayor, there is a theater component to it. They're looking at a multifunctional space where you'll be able to, if it's just watching movies, then you can watch movies. Or there'll be a separate place where you can watch movies on one side while you're doing a function on the other. I don't know that it'll be maybe what we think of as a traditional movie theater these days. It'll be more probably special events, and then they're looking in the future to renting that out to some type of company or group that wants to kind of continue moving the theater forward in that direction. But there will always be a theater component tied to it.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. I was just thinking about the size of the screen and the seating layout and the balcony and sort of the classic feel of that theater. And I sure hope that it's a place where movies can still be screened. Maybe it can be, maybe there's some thought towards having it be like some of these theaters you see in other communities where they do special screenings of like classic movies, and it's kind of fun to go see them on the big screen because that's the only time you're going to be able to do that, right? If you want to go see, I don't know, The Searchers or something in the old panorama with that big screen there, that'd be kind of fun.
Absolutely. I would say one of the things that they're doing with this campaign is they really want to talk about all the memories that people had at the WYO from the community while it was up and functioning. So I think that that'll definitely be a component to how they're moving it forward. And I will send to the council the slide presentation that the board went through a couple of weeks ago that kind of gives you a layout and the vision of what they want that building to look like.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good. I think the city of Laramie and the people who live here do not want to see the YO Theater go away. I think there's a thought and a hope that there's always a YO Theater here in Laramie. Councilmember Harrington, I saw you pop a hand up there on this topic, so I just want to go to you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and really kind of a question for Councilor Somerville. So the that sort of advisory group or smaller committee is something that I've been participating in on for several years, since really the beginning of this conversation with the YO. I would like to continue doing that, but I wanted to make sure that was not sort of stepping on Councilor Somerville's toes as the Main Street liaison. I haven't participated in any of these board conversations. Simply have been working on the theater itself.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Harrington, I always say the more the merrier. There's certainly quite a bit of work to do, so please come join us again.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, so you don't have to arm wrestle Councilmember Somerville about work on this. I'm looking forward to hear more about it. I know council members, it's a big challenge. It's certainly not a done deal. There's a lot of dollars involved. But again, I think people really like the YO Theater. Other comments or questions on this topic since it was, yeah. Okay, other updates, next updates. Councilmember Gabriel, are you ready to go? And then maybe we'll go to Councilmember Schuster. So let's go Gabriel, Schuster, and then whoever's after that. Cumby.
Thanks, Mayor. Attended the Albany County Tourism Board meeting yesterday. Things are really looking very well for travel and tourism this summer. We'll have some final numbers for the month of, summer months next few weeks. And things are going well in their new location as well at 800 South 3rd. Went back to the hometown on Sunday to take a tour of the Cheyenne Botanical Gardens. And I've never been there before. It is one impressive place. I'm telling you, Cheyenne did it right. Lots of major donors in the city of Cheyenne should be very proud, and I'm sure they are. But I was blown away by that facility in the children's area. It was really impressive. That's it. Thanks.
That's good to know. And Councilmember Gabriel, we'll look forward to maybe a follow-up about that for those Albany County tourism members if there's something about that for the summer. I think I had Councilmember Schuster next.
Thank you very much. Historical Railroad Depot meeting, we went through that. One of our biggest concerns is we now have the depot rented several Fridays, Saturdays, and we're having a little problem with parking, and our parking lot is private. So we have negotiated with a towing company. We had a wedding there that I went down and did a little security for parking to make sure only wedding guests were parking there. We had a funeral last Friday, and we did end up towing one car that decided being that close, and I'm going to apologize saying it, farmer's market. I like farmer's market. My wife bought 8 dozen ears of sweet corn and has cooked it and froze it, so we have peaches and cream sweet corn, and I love it. But somebody that went there that decided they were going to park, and they moved a parking A-frame thing that says private parking for depot guests only, so they got towed. So just a little thing is, we are towing down there now if there's a function and you're not part of the function. We have printed up things to go on people's dash if you're part of the function, and you won't get towed, and if you don't have it, you're going to get towed. So if there's a function going on. Wyoming Territorial Park will meet next month. We had our last meeting. Things are going very good there. We've been up in attendance. We're looking at some small remodels of some of the restrooms and things like that to try to get everything to be as clean and as perfect as we can. I've had a lot of people contact me. I was on USAC. They had their meeting during the day. I am unable to attend those meetings during the day. I wish I could negotiate something in the evening, but you never know. The other thing, and I'll probably be taking away Councilman Schmuckel's statement, sight-in season starts the first weekend in September goes on for 9 weekends in a row, where the Rifle Range will be open Saturday and Sunday. It'll be maintained with range safety officers and people in the clubhouse if they have any concerns or need help. We also have a nice tool shop to help set up scopes. And that's usually the biggest problem, is I got this brand new gun, this brand new scope, and it doesn't shoot straight. Yeah, well, we can probably help them with that. And that's all I have. Thank you. Oh, wanted to say the Wyo Theater, love to hear that it's being possibly coming back. Thank you, Andy and Brian. When I was in high school, it was one of the main places. Clear back then, and yes, they did have motion pictures then, and had been there hundreds and hundreds of times. And I loved it probably 15 years ago when we called it second run movies. So it would be like 3 or 4 months after a movie came out, and then we could go see it for a reduced price and still have your theater popcorn and snacks and all that stuff. Loved it when it was that too. Thank you very much.
No problem, Councilmember Schuster. You know, there was a time for a summer there back around that same time frame, a little longer than 10 years ago. I worked there. I ran the projector, and they were still running their 1960s projector. It was good times, but I do have a lot of fond memories of the Wyo. Councilmember Schuster, do you feel like there's adequate signage down there in that depot parking lot? Are people just ignoring it because they want a handy place to park, or is it an issue of signs? And I know the depot group has not unlimited resources. I mean, maybe there's a need for bigger or more visible signage. Has that been part of that conversation?
We have signs on the building, which are very visible, bright red and white. And then we have these, I don't even know what they call them. It's an A-frame. It stands up about 48 inches in the air. It has lettering on it. We put it right there where they have to almost hit it to get around it, that says, this is reserved for an event at the Historical Railroad Depot. You will be towed at your expense. I mean, they have to almost physically get out and move it to be able to pull in that parking lot. So no, signage is not an issue. People that decide, no, maybe if I just sneak in there, they won't know it's my car. So like we said, we printed up and laminated things that go on the dash. And if you don't have one, you're not going to like us.
All right. Let's see. Thank you for those comments and updates. And I'm going to go to whoever. I think Councilmember Cumby had her hand up, and then I'll go to the Vice Mayor. And then, sorry if I've lost track. I've got all the hands up, so we'll go in that order. Councilmember Cumby, thanks for waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nancy has posted our poster, and I just wanted to let you know that the Vaccine Incentive Project has launched today, and people are able to register online, and there will be 6 $1,000 drawings and 1 grand prize drawing for $2,500. The drawings begin September 6th and go through October. And so I just wanted you to know it's been really amazing working with this group of probably at least 25 people who are a great cross-section from our city, from different agencies, governmental agencies, nonprofits, hospital, public health. So anyway, we're up and running. So hopefully we can move toward our 70% goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. And I emailed Councilmember Cumby last week because I wasn't able to be at the meeting for the portion of the meeting that she was talking to our group about. But I just want to say again, with all the council members present, we're very fortunate to have you and your expertise in public health right now. And in general, I think that would be a good thing. And right now, it's a particularly strong blessing for the council to have you here. So we're really grateful and thankful for your work. Councilmember Schuster, I saw you pop a hand up.
Thank you. Are you entered in for the drawing if you get a booster shot? I had somebody ask me that saw the poster today. So they already have their first round of shots and now are asking if they get their booster, would they be included in that? Or is that kind of, thank you for getting your early shots, but no?
Individuals living or working in Albany County who have received their vaccination, their full vaccination, are eligible to sign up and register for the drawing. What the booster is not eligible for is the $25 gift card. So we do have $25 gift card for the first shot and the second shot, or $50 if you get the Johnson. But any person who has the full vaccination round is eligible to sign up for the drawings.
Okay. Thank you.
And one of the stipulations for collecting a prize is that you verify that you have completed your series.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks again, Councilmember Cumby. Good questions. Vice Mayor, thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I attended the Planning Commission meeting last night. It was, based on what I've heard, a relatively quick meeting, only a couple hours. And the major thing on the agenda had to do with a conditional use permit at 915 Harney for a daycare, and it was approved.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I had Councilmember Schmeckel up next, and then I'll go to Councilmember O'Doherty, whose hand I just saw. So, Councilmember Schmeckel.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to attend the first Laramie Rifle Range meeting, first of my obligations. And thank you, Councilmember Schuster, for speaking about the site-in season here that's open to the public. Other news in that meeting as well is that they are beginning work on a event next summer that's geared towards supporting veterans. And it's something that comparable to an event that they've done in the past, it's brought in 250 people from outside of Laramie to come to our area for a 2 or 3 day event. So we're very excited they've got such a great opportunity to bring some tourism dollars here to Laramie.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Councilmember, for that update, adding to it. And all I can say is, Councilmember Schmeckel, if you want to talk about the rifle range, you got to get that hand up before Councilmember Schuster, because he always takes advantage of his position on the board there to let us know what's going on, which we don't mind. It's always all right.
Duly noted, and I welcome the assistance.
Yeah, he'll get you. He'll get you every time on the rifle range. All right, Councilmember O'Doherty.
The EAC, the Environmental Advisory Commission, and the Traffic Commission didn't meet because of lack of quorum, but the chair of the EAC, Chair Carano, and Mr. Bentley both reviewed the requests for qualifications that our staff and the county staff put together for the Casper Aquifer protection. So that, I think, is going to be on our agenda next week. Is that right, City Clerk? Casper Aquifer, well, we'll see. Okay, yeah, not next week, the week after. Okay, and then I'm ashamed to say I missed the Mountain Town Solutions meeting today, where they talk about how the other mountain towns are achieving carbon neutrality. So I will get the lowdown from Monica Leiniger. But also I wanted to say that we're coming up on the 117th anniversary of the lynching of Joe Martin. And I attended that ceremony that the Albany County Historical Society had at the Green Hill Cemetery. It's on the plaque. They unveiled a plaque. It's on the west side of the cemetery. I guess that's near the Potter's Field. And it's a plaque that commemorates the event that happened in August 29th, 1904. Joe Martin was a black man. He was in jail for writing a lurid letter to a woman, a white woman. He was dragged from the jail with a rope and carried across and hanged. And when the judge returned, he tried to have a grand jury. He had witnesses. Mr. Corthell, in fact, knew who some of the 200 to 300 people were who participated, but the grand jury did not call him as a witness, and no one was charged. So now there's a plaque so that we can remember that. Maybe say a little prayer when you're on the corner of 6th and Brand. Thank you. Oh, and the website for the Albany County Historical Society, if you look up Joe Martin, you can see the long story. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Yeah, I saw a post about that from the Historical Society. History is important. All of it's important. Okay, next up is probably me. I don't have committee updates from those that I gave you last time. We haven't had any subsequent civil service meetings. I would like to take an opportunity to inquire with other members and the city clerk about the youth council and where we're at. I just haven't heard too much about that over the last couple of weeks. Is there an update about that from anyone?
Mayor, I'd be happy to fill you in a little bit here. They
Please.
meet the first time on September 1st from 3:30 to 5. We have 12 members currently on the Youth Council. There are 3 positions still available. I've only received one comment so far from a student that has a conflict with swimming, which we know is going to happen periodically throughout the year with sporting events and other school type events. So, but otherwise they all seem very energetic and ready to hit the ground running. The first couple meetings, the city manager and I have spoken about trying to get them oriented as far as what the goal and the purpose of the youth council are, and let them get to know each other a little bit before they elect officers at the beginning of October. And then as you've all seen, we hope to have a meet and greet with them, even if it's via Zoom, to allow you to see their faces, them to see your faces and other elected officials, and ask any questions that they might have of how you got to where you are now, you know, what actions they can take as a youth council and things to that nature. There's a lot of exciting things going on this year. We've had conversations with other youth councils across the state, hoping to have a summit in the near future, sometime hopefully this year. And so we've been in some conversations with those other committees, trying to figure out what that would look like and how we can get the youth involved, not only in our community, but with other youth across the state. So many conversations with Albany County School District this year as well. They have a youth advocacy council that would like to stay in communication with the students from youth council this year, as well as the student council. So lots of activity for this year.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it was time we got a little bit of an update about that. And City Clerk, you were the one to give it to us. So thank you so much. Councilmember Schuster, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. Will that be on Zoom? Will their meeting be on Zoom?
It is on Zoom. I don't know that the meeting notices will be published to the public, just to protect the fact that they are youth and stuff. So if you would like more information about that, you know, feel free to contact myself or city manager, you know.
Yes, please. I'm on that group and I would like to be able to join in as soon as I can get off work. So yes, I would, please.
Yeah, City Clerk, just keeping those council liaisons to that committee in the loop is good. I know you will. But anyway, I, again, appreciate the updates on that. Hadn't heard much about it, and I know it's going to be picking up. Glad that we have students that are still interested and continue to be interested in being on the youth council. Sounds like we've got a couple of seats that we need to fill. Other things for me is I had a request, council members, from a staff member over at Big Brothers Big Sisters to join us at a meeting for a 5-10 minute update about some of their programming and things that they're doing sometime in October. And I thought I'd run that by you all and see if you were favorable to that, and ask you what meeting you'd like to put that on. I kind of jumping a little bit around our schedule here, but if you'll allow it, council members, think about that, and let's see if we can figure that out. Maybe it could be at a work session, I guess. It doesn't need to be during a regular meeting. They certainly didn't request one way or the other, but they did ask for early October. So I don't know that we have to nail it down tonight, but probably for scheduling purposes, it's always better sooner than later, so we can get back to them. Any thoughts or ideas about that? Strong feelings about it? About when we should? City clerk,
Can I just confirm with you, what group did you say that was?
Yeah, you bet. Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they sent me an email and said, we'd like to come to a city council meeting and tell you about our programming this year. And of course, we'd like to hear about it. So I don't know, maybe the first regular meeting in October. Vice Mayor.
So, Mayor, I'm wondering if it would be more of a presentation that we could have during our regular meeting, or are you talking about a special meeting?
No, I'm talking about 5 minutes on an agenda at a regular meeting, I think is all they're looking at. And they didn't request either way, but it seems to me like it would be good to give them an opportunity to do that at a regular meeting. How does that first meeting in October sound to everybody? Okay, let's do that, and I'll get them in touch with the city clerk for whatever other further arrangements they need to make. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks, council. So let's talk about agenda, which I don't know that we even have because of the
There's no agenda since it's 2 weeks away.
5th Tuesday next.
Right, yeah, 5th Tuesday. So we have the extended time between the next meeting and this evening. So any topics for anything else? I don't see anything on our agenda or on our agenda for the work session. So we'll go over to public comments unless anybody has something on updates or comments that they didn't get to make yet. Okay, see if we have any public comments on general topics. All right, no takers there. I think we can close the work session, ladies and gentlemen. And I wish you all a good evening and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.